Okay, hello, people of my page. My name is Kat, and welcome to my channel, Speak Truth to Lies. Today, I'm very excited because I have the author of this amazing book, Race Crazy, if you can see it without the glare. BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement by Charles Love. Charles Love, welcome to my channel.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I found you on Deb's channel. I saw your interview with her and immediately started following you, pre-ordered your book, like right then. But I also ordered your other books. We Want Equality, and what was the other one? It was
Logic. How can you forget
Logic, the Republican Party, and what Black America do to reclaim it, or something to that effect. I can't remember off the top, but this one's my favorite so far. So yeah, I just, why and how did you get into this? I know you wrote your first book in 2012. So what inspired that book?
Yeah, it's I think that what is the most amazing part, so I have 3 books, so people are like, oh, that's really cool, but it's interesting. It's like, how did nobody just come up, with 3 books? And the people who've been reading from the beginning, the thing I like the most is they get to the 3rd book, and they've obviously been reading the books for a while. They can see a progression, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's obviously just by the nature of having more conversations about these things. And really, the reason I wrote the books are different in a sense.
Okay.
So it's funny you said you're really enjoying the last one, because, as much as I like all 3, they're like your little baby. And the current one is important for the current times we're in. I personally have a bit of a more affection to the 2nd book. And it's because when I wrote the first book, you can tell the difference between the others, because it wasn't really intended to be a book. I didn't sit down and say, hey, I'm going to write this book. What happened was I was living my life. So, traditionally, I worked in the restaurant industry. I was a restaurant manager for 20 years. So, I paid attention to stuff. I liked history, but it was like a hobby. It's not what I did, right? So but I was always, as a restaurant manager, I think you can, the interesting thing about any of the service industries, and you can attest to this, is that there's something unique about the way you approach life and people.
Yes.
Right, because you're in an industry, and people, when I say this to them, it makes sense. But when you first just put that out there, they look at you kind of like, what do you mean? Especially if they're lawyers or academics and things of that nature. We all have something positive to bring. But what I think is unique about people in these industries is that you are forced to deal with different people from different backgrounds and different looks and different personalities, regardless, right? Because think of who works in the restaurant and who comes to eat in the restaurant. So you get really, because people act like restaurants are just some people, bunch of high school dropouts and get a job, but they forget about all the college students who put themselves through college. So that during the day they're studying philosophy and psychology and history and math and all this stuff, econ, and then they're serving and pouring drinks at the bar. So that, they are those same people. So 10 years later, they may be some academic, but right now, they're in the mix with the rest of the people. You have, lots of immigrants. You have illegals who come in and they work, right? So you're working alongside them. But we're not talking about politics. We're not talking about illegal immigration, legislation, but they're part of the group. So they're part of the people you interact with daily.
Yep.
You have rich kids rich kids whose parents like, I want to teach you work ethic. So because I'm a millionaire doesn't mean that you get my money, go to work. And then you have poor kids who are helping their family using that money, even though they're in high school. I've had people I work with that were high school students, but they weren't doing it for extra money. They were doing it to send home. And then the guests are truck drivers or business people on a business lunch and all these kind of things. So everybody goes to eat, right?
Yep.
And even the wealthy people, they don't own, unless they're really wealthy, yeah, maybe. But rich people, upper middle class people don't only eat at the club, right? Because there are a lot of people who make, $100,000 a year who don't have memberships at the club, right?
Yeah.
So you see everybody, you deal with everybody, you have to interact with everybody. Most people who work in everyday jobs don't have to do that.
Exactly.
So, and the people who do, it's just natural for them, so they don't think about it. So your typical restaurant manager wouldn't describe their job that way. They would just say, so I go to work and I manage the restaurant, but they don't realize that that's what they do. They talk to people from all walks of life, all day, every day. And you start to understand basics of human nature. So, the first book was just really just simply, hearing what people were saying and saying that doesn't really make sense. So I'm taking notes. I'm like, I can't believe these people who have degrees in this concentration, and they're saying these things that don't make sense. Or, upper middle class people saying that they're oppressed. People who had never talked about politics, starting to talk about politics because I think Barack Obama had just won his second term when I wrote the last book. And so he just won his second term. And a lot of my middle class and upper middle class Black friends were like, man, no president has ever been treated this bad. Or, all these people are voting against him because all the white people are voting against him because he's Black. And I'm just saying, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know, I don't have buddies who are racist, so I can't go to my best friend, white racist, and say, why are you racist? But I do have common sense.
Yes.
And so I was saying things like, so the country, all the white people are racist. It's just simple numbers, right? All the white people, all of them. Yet he won 2 terms. And if every Black person in the country voted for him, he still would have lost unless some white people voted for him. So I just don't understand what you're saying. It's not about whether you should vote for him or not. It's just these numbers don't add up. And they would say all these other things. So the first book was me taking notes about these, and it became these myths that people believed about Republicans. So I would say, don't vote for them if you don't agree with their policies. I know a lot of people who just flat out don't agree with their policies. You shouldn't vote for them. But what shocked me, it happens a little bit everywhere, but more in the Black community. You have a decent sized percentage of Blacks who, if you just talk to them, don't talk politics. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about what happened on the news yesterday? They sound like conservatives, right? Their beliefs on issues are conservatives, but they've never voted for a Republican. And you say, why? And they say, oh, because they're all racist and they do these things. They all think this, they all think that. So it's just like, that didn't make sense. So I had these conversations and I just kind of put them together in the collection to kind of demystify this boogeyman of Republicans. And that's what the first one. But the second was deliberately, I'm writing this book and this is why.
I really enjoyed the first one, like when you were talking about like your upbringing, your parents, the viewpoints, and then how like you got into rock music and then in high school and things were just very different for you. You looked at things from a very different perspective. I enjoyed that part as well. I kind of knew a brief history about the Republican Party, which is why it's so confusing that, what did I think the last, was it like 90-something% of the Black population votes strictly Democrat, even though the Republican Party was founded by Black Americans. I also have issues with history in general. Like I told my husband, my political awakening came in the past couple of years. I lost a lot of friends because I voted for Trump, because I started like once, Governor Whitler locked us in our houses, I started paying attention. After the second one. The first one, I was like, okay, 2 weeks to slow the spread. I can get behind that. Second one, I'm like, oh, well, maybe the hospitals are overwhelmed. When she extended it third time, I was like, okay, something's not right. So I started asking questions and then I started diving into research and started seeking out stuff. And I can't tell you how many of my friends just like either A, walked away from me because of who I was voting for, or B, just like told me to shut up and do as I was told. I'm a recovering addict. I told you that on the phone earlier. So it took a while for my brain to completely heal. And when it did, and I started paying attention, because prior to that, I didn't care about anything. I was like, oh, whatever, Kat was the go with the flow kind of girl. But when I started waking up, like I had to look at this last election, like, of course. Okay, first off, I can't say that I don't like Trump because I don't know him. You got to know somebody and talk to him to be able to form that kind of consensus. So when people say, I don't like him, well, you don't know him. You just know the personality, but you don't know him. I had to step away from it. And the aspect is, I'm not in high school. This isn't a personality contest. Let me look at policy. And that's why I voted for him. But all of this stuff that's going on right now, it's like, it's coming so fast that I'm having a hard time keeping up. I don't know about you, but I'm just like, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm like, you do realize that just for, like you said, for sheer numbers sake, there is no way that there's going to be equal representation in every potential field that there is. And then you said something else. Oh, never mind. But yeah, it just it'll come back to me. I'm really like, the Black Lives Matter. Like I was like, I support obviously the movement because I believe that Black lives do matter. All lives matter. Um, but the organization like you delve into and race crazy, I had no idea. So if you could elaborate or speak a little bit on that, with the funding and where it comes from and everything, just to let my listeners know, that'd be really great.
Okay. Well, I want to say one thing before I talk about the good old BLM. So you talked about the Your Awakening and others, and if people decide to look into the other books or what I write about Republicans in the first book and anything, I always approach it with, I want people to be clear about what I'm saying. So they don't have to agree with it. But what I don't want is for someone to say, well, you said this, and here's the problem with it, when that's not actually what I said. As I said before, you agree with their policies, vote for them. I just thought it was odd that people did not, from a policy standpoint, agree with it, but they were, going along with whatever. And so it's not like I'm a Republican or I'm telling them to vote for Republicans. I'm just saying, know the truth. But, and it goes the same thing with, any one of these issues. You talk about BLM and so in the book, I point out first, before I even get to where the money comes from and what they're doing, the first thing is just that they were founded to stop, to push back against police brutality. And they don't even talk about police brutality anymore. So
No, and you said something in your book too about last year being a perfect storm for that. And I said the same thing to my husband, with the lockdowns and people just angry, like anger. I tried to tell my friend, what happened last summer with BLM and the riots and George Floyd. And then January 6th, I'm like, well, I have some issues about that one too. I believe that was allowed to happen, but we're going to get into that. That it's just anger. When you break everything down to like its most basic level, people were angry. They're angry. They're losing their jobs. They have no money. They have, you take people's livelihoods away from them. That removes purpose from their lives. So when you said that in the book, like I was like, yes, like it's like nailing the nail on the head.
but really quickly about your friends, the second time you mentioned your friends talking about the reaction there, your friends talking about how they distance themselves from you. This is one of the things I mentioned to Republicans, and I say that's kind of a problem. So the problem is on two fronts. There's two different ideologies, and which is fine. Politically, it's fine for Democrats to say, this is what I want, and I'm pushing this and I'm selling it to you. And Republicans can say the same, this is what I want, this is what I'm selling to you. And they say, this is a clear distinction between me and them. We're different. Totally fine. But the Democrats and most of the people on the left go beyond that, right? They tie your personality, your beliefs, your moral behavior and understanding who you are, whether they like you or don't like you, to that. Republicans are just like, yeah, hey, we're right and you're wrong, so we want to beat you. Okay. So because they think differently, they can't wrap their minds around the fact that, hey, that person is a liberal and has these values that are opposite of mine. And so they'll be like, well, that person's wrong. What do they think? I don't think why they think that way. But they can still be like, you all want to go grab something to eat? Right? The people on the left are like, no, because you think the opposite way of me, you're a bad person. So you need to be ostracized in society, or you need to be, totally destroyed. You need to be canceled, or you're just morally bad. You're racist, you whatever. So you talk about your friends. It's just fascinating that your friends, I don't even know how the conversation came up, because I don't talk to my friends about who I voted for, because it's not their business. That's why I go in the booth and pull a curtain. But if you do, I don't understand why they all just need to say, well, because you voted for this person, I can't talk to you anymore, right? You don't really, now, every time you say something about the left or the right doing this, the other side will say, well, that's not true, or you do it too. This is one of those things, I don't know, you can say it happens on both sides, right? There's no both sides of, you voted for Biden, so don't ever speak to me again. You just simply don't hear that, right? You voted for Clinton, so don't ever, now you might get, you voted for Clinton, you're a crazy person. What's wrong with you? That's dumb. You don't know, you don't understand how bad she is. They may say things like that, but they don't say, don't ever talk to me again, right? They don't yell fascist and all these other things. They don't say, we must resist. And so, I mean, I think that's important, because people are trying to you know, navigate these waters and debate people on these fronts. And so like my target is to approach center left and center right people to get them to focus on what's important and not focus on all this other madness. So I don't have a problem with talking to liberals and stuff. But once I find out that person is on the left, I just say, okay, and move on. I don't see why people waste their time on
arguing.
this. Yeah, and I'm like more of a macro person. So like my Twitter fun in the last few days has been watching all these people on the left and the right debating these two high profile cases, right? Arbery and Rittenhouse. And so I mean, I don't tweet that much, you know, because I'm pretty, you know, stay on topic, you know, focus on what you believe. Don't get pulled and sucked into all these debates. But it's so often I want to type stuff and then I delete it because it's like, because you know, I hear somebody, so they're following a trial and they make a comment. It's like, so this proves that he's innocent or he's guilty. This proves it was white supremacy in this case. But you know what my real reaction to both cases is? I know you're not supposed to say this and you're recording it, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I simply don't care. I don't care about fine. I don't care about George Floyd. I don't care about Rittenhouse. I don't care about Arbery. I don't care about these one-off cases. We have 330 million people. And I, unlike the hard left, believe that people are evil. So people are going to get raped, shot, and murdered. I want the people who did it in jail, but I don't spend my time glued to the TV following every bit of the trial. I don't care. So to watch people debate, well, did you see that the prosecutor did this?
And get so emotionally invested.
Was he jogging? Was he running away? Why did he have an AR? I'm like, I don't care. And then people like try to pull me into the conversation. I'm like, I don't have an opinion. I'm not watching that crap. I don't care. I don't care. Don't care. But these people get emotionally involved. Like if people will be mad if Rittenhouse gets found guilty, or people will be mad if he doesn't. I'm like, why? You know how many people do you think across the country, because this is national media that they're watching, not even just in Wisconsin, how many people will be murdered from the day the trial opened to the day the sentence is given,
exactly.
or he's guilty or innocent, right?
Exactly.
So if you care so much about life, whether it's all lives or Black lives, why aren't you talking about all those other dead people?
Well,
Some of them had to be innocent.
How many lives were lost during the riots last year in comparison to the one? I mean, one of them.
Their lives aren't as important. So it's not even so it's not even the argument. So we have the debate between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. No. The real thing is his life matters. Whoever his is, or her life, whoever it is. So Breonna's life matters, and you know, what's his name? George Floyd, their all lives matter, but everybody else's lives matter. People get shot every day. I don't. I'm not saying they're saying they want them to get shot. It's just like, it's not George Floyd. So, you know, you don't get a bust when you get shot. So it's just silly to me, and I don't waste my time on it. So you know, there are many times, like I said, I'm in the middle of a tweet to say, why do you even care? And then I say, what's the point? And then I delete and I say,
exactly. Like, what's the point?
But I really want to ask them and say, why are you so emotionally involved? I mean, if
because the media tells them they're supposed to be.
Right, but if I give them the argument, you know, my point is my approach is always to give them the argument. So if I give you the argument and assume that race is the major component in both or any of these cases, racism's not going to be solved. It's not like if those white men in Georgia, is it Georgia? I don't even remember what state it is. If they're found guilty of Ahmaud Arbery's murder, we're not going to just stop talking about race now and say, whoo, it's all over. We know that, we can prove that. See, some of these things are all opinion. But Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all counts, right? And if I'm correct, they stopped talking about race after that, right? No more race talk in the news after that? No, they didn't stop. Huh. But then they get sucked in. Every time the next case comes in, they're like, this is the case. We are.
Well, the best part about the Kyle Rittenhouse case is that there's like, oh, he's a white supremacist. I'm like, you do realize he killed white people?
Oh, I saw some posts from the left that say, these are the things fascists. So what you just said, according to Twitter, is what fascists will say. These are the
I know the things that I've seen that too.
And one of them is, they'll say he shot white people. I mean, yeah, it's true, but still, if you say it, you're fascist. I don't care if it's true. You saying it, it's white signaling. I don't know. So that's why I just stay out of front. I just focus on, and so as I do in the book, I pointed out what I give my opinion, and this is what I think is wrong. But if you say you disagree with me, I say, okay, give you an argument. All the white people are racist. Police are hunting down blacks. What are you doing to fix it? And that's the BLM piece. What are they doing to
What are you
fix it?
doing? Yeah.
They don't talk about police brutality anymore, right? And you say, you know, the Hawk Newsom, I'm sorry, made the news recently with his crazy comment in New York. But you know, and by the way, in the book, I mentioned him because BLM, the organization, he's the only person they distanced themselves from. Only one. The woman in Chicago saying looting is reparations, they didn't complain and say, don't speak for us. The people who said, we got to burn it all down, all that stuff is fine. Him, only one they distance themselves from. And you know why? I say, can't prove it, but I look at all the people, I analyze the information, make a logical conclusion. It's because he's a man and they're, you know, women forward, pro women, you know, all that kind of thing. It's like, who is he to be speaking out for BLM? So him. But outside of him, who's talking about police protection? Go to their website. They don't really talk about it. You know, you listen to what people say. It's all you read the quotes that I found. It's all, you know, capitalism and migrants and outside of banning the police and abolishing prisons, everything else is all, you know, Democrat talking points. They talk about minimum wage and they talk about healthcare. They talk about all that stuff. Now, this keep in mind, because I know the left will get mad and they'll start saying, well, you white people deserve this and you don't agree with it. You don't think everybody deserves pay? Excuse me, but our debate was about police brutality. Why are we talking about pay?
Yeah, exactly.
My point is, you have an organization founded on police brutality, getting hundreds of millions of dollars in donations, and they don't do anything about police brutality. So let's change the topic to give a better example. People understand stories. If you had an organization that opened to combat heart disease, and you gave them tens of thousands of dollars of your own hard-earned money, and you found out that let's say they weren't even stealing the money and buying homes. They were taking the money and they were putting it into cancer research or juvenile diabetes, or they were giving it to a jobs program to help the homeless. Those are all very positive things, but that's not what you gave your money for.
No.
Right? So no other charity would do it. So why would you give your money to BLM so they can support ending police brutality, only to find out that they're doing nothing about police brutality? And then when I point it out, I'm the bad guy. Right? They're not, right? So they're simply not doing anything about that. I got quotes in the book. The other thing is the media, even though we know it's skews left and they treat conservatives unfairly, to be fair and honest, I don't think I wrote this in the book, and conservatives kind of look at me when I say this, but it's true. Everybody is mistreated in the media. It's just that the right is treated far worse. But everybody, because the news is the way the news is built now. It's all clickbait and short sound bites, right? So even
opinions, fair, no facts. It's all opinions.
So to be fair, if Nancy Pelosi made a speech, she could speak for 17 minutes. They're going to pull a 30-second clip, right?
Yep.
And so Fox is going to pull the clip that makes her look bad. MSNBC pull the clip that makes her look good, and NBC is going to pull whichever one will get the most clicks. They don't care if it makes it look bad. If it gets the most clicks, we just want clicks. So I want to be fair to Nancy Pelosi, even if I think what she said is crazy. So I will list, like in the book, I will play the whole paragraph. This is all of what she said. Right. So I do the same thing with BLM. So if I just say BLM is a radical feminist group, you'll say all the right people say that. Okay, here's their demands. They make demands. Here are the demands. You tell me how you can take these in another context. So when they were making the debate between defunding the police and the right saying that's terrible, that'd be bad for me. Well, that's not really what it means. You know that's what it means. You take it out of context. By defund, they don't actually mean defund. They mean take the money and allocate resources to give them some help. So when they have to do domestics, instead of sending the police by themselves, you send a social worker with it. Instead of, that's what it says. I said, oh really? Because in the book it says, in all caps, we are abolitionists. We want to abolish all prisons, jails, immigration detention centers, juvenile detention centers, no police or no security in schools. They want to end all surveillance. So let's walk this through. So you can't have surveillance in the schools. Boom, we're dark, no cameras. You can't have security in the school, and they don't want the little metal detectors. So now a kid can walk in the school with a gun. You can't catch the gun because there's no metal detectors. When he sneaks to put it in his, take it out his bag and put it somewhere where he wants to hide it behind the radiator, you can't catch it on tape because you don't want surveillance. Then he takes the gun and he shoots somebody. No one's there to tackle him because you don't want security. And if by dumb luck the police catch them, all they want the police are abolished. You can't put them in jail because they don't want anyone over 65 and anyone under 23 in jail. Have you heard anyone mention that? Because I found that in their words, I cite where I find it from.
Yep.
I try my best never to use conservative sources because I know they'll say this is a conservative guy. And yeah, he told the story and it sounds good, but he got it from Fox News. So they twisted it. Nope. I get my
Nope,
source
straight from the horse's mouth.
right, from out of their mouth, from the teachers union's website, from the school's website, from their mouth, from their websites, from Think Progress, from all the liberal sites I can find when you can find them reporting on it, right? Because there's so many people reporting on stuff. Some liberals going to accidentally, or liberal would do it because they think it's bad, but the left, they'll accidentally do it. They'll either report on it, look at what great work these people are doing, or they'll report on it just because it's news and they're trying to make their way up and it's something interesting and then nobody finds it. So if you do enough research, you find this stuff. So now what do you say? I've got their words, right? I got the words in their, in their context, from their site, not from a right-wing site. So now you have to decide if you agree with that. So if you're a benevolent white and you say, man, I believe the black people saying police are treating them poorly. I mean, I'm white. I don't know the experience. At least I can do is throw them a few bucks. And then you find out, Mr. Executive at Nike, that their real goal, if they had everything they wanted, what they get is the end of capitalism, which would be the end of Nike. Why would you give somebody money who wants? And you just answer that for the sake of the goal is, but I know the left is going to come and spin up with a reason why. Okay, but most liberals will be like, look, I'm not saying I like Trump or I want Republicans in office. I still want Democrats to win, but I want the right Democrats to win, not these people, because these people are crazy. They will admit, at the very least, they'll stop giving them money. I didn't realize they didn't like capitalism and wanted all the jobs to be controlled by the government. That's a bridge too far for me.
Well, that's been going on for a really long time. I mean,
yeah, but nobody knows it because the only thing you heard, and I'm saying it's true, but I'm like, you just tip of the iceberg when they would say they want to just disrupt the nuclear family. Everybody was saying that.
Yeah.
And since then they've taken that off the website.
Because when I was reading this one, I was also, a lot of the information in here, I was also reading the authoritarians. So a lot of the information, it's a heavy book. I'm not even done. Like I can only take it in small chunks at a time, but a lot of the information in this one, like some stuff that crossed. So I bookmarked it.
You get bookmarks. I like this.
I'm very OCD. You were when you right here, you're talking about the Moynihan Report. Okay, so that was the one. Was it Johnson? So yeah, he got, Kennedy got shot. He took over, and he did the whole, war on poverty based off of that report. Which I feel like, and I read that one, and then I've read Color, Communism, and Common Sense. And I keep telling my students, like, nothing that is happening today in the Black community is by accident. None of it is by accident. You look at all the democratically controlled cities that have been ran into the ground, and people that have lost their homes and their property values dropping, and then, the complete breakdown, like 25%. That was it. Less than 25%. They based that report off to do the war on poverty of Black children were born into out of wedlock families. I'll be honest, I want to know what the comparison for the other numbers were, but I'd be willing to bet that they did this because Black Americans were superseding that of white married families, and they couldn't have that. So they had to figure out a way to destroy the family. And now what? Both Black and white children are born out of what? Like it's in the 70s percentile. Like they've completely, I mean, I grew up in a single parent household, I don't think that's the way my mom wanted to be. My mom and dad got divorced after my sister was born, but, I'm very fortunate that I have a man in my life that loves me. He stuck through the whole addiction and the recovery, and he's still here and he still loves me. And I can tell you, from raising my first child as a single parent to raising my youngest with a partner, it's just easier.
Right.
It's just easier.
If for nothing else, it's just got more time, right?
Yes.
When you need to take a little break. I mean, where do you go to take a break when there's no one else there, right? And especially if you happen to also be single parent and also not have the financial means to just pay somebody to come and do something or whatever.
Well, I mean, that was the other thing too. We didn't have family. We have nobody. So when I went back to school for cosmetology, I had to pay for childcare. We had to pay for childcare. When I wanted to go back, like finally, when I went back for my instructor's license, he was old enough to where, and responsible enough to where I could trust that he could come home, straight home from school, be here for an hour before I came home, because we don't have any help. If I was a single mother, that would have been 3 or 4 times more difficult for me. And most of my students are young single, like, well, not all of them, but quite a few of them are single moms. And I get it. Like, I was there, but why would you choose that? I mean, not every woman that gets pregnant is from a one night stand. I mean, I was in a relationship with my oldest son's father. He just decided he didn't want to have kids and walked away. So you can't really control someone else's behavior, but the destruction of the family and not wanting to get married, like, I can say that life has been exponentially easier the past 20 years, even with the addiction. Like, it's just been easier.
Well, when you talk about the Moynihan Report, one interesting thing that I point out is the fact that he was basically sounding an alarm saying this was going to be a problem. And
They created the problem.
and we all focus on the Black because it's so high, 70% or whatever. But no one, you mentioned the fact that you grew up in a single family home and it became more of a problem across the board. So people don't realize that since then, the numbers for Blacks have tripled, but for whites, it's 9 times what it was at that time. So it got worse for everyone, but because we're so focused on the one, like now I think nationally, the average, the percentage across the board is like 41 or 42%, not quite half, but it's getting closer to half. It's a half of all births, regardless of race, right? And the other funny thing is, if you go to the highest percentage to the lowest, you invert that, and then you look at the income within that ethnic group, it's the same. It's
we lost your camera.
yeah, I had to move something real quick.
Okay.
But you can still hear me, right?
Yes.
I'm still here, but yeah, so the incomes tie in, right? So the Asian Americans have the lowest and they have the highest income, right? So there's got to be something there that we should look to, right? May not be the whole solution, but that's the point of my book, is to say, if you only look at race as the problem, you only look at race being the solution. So here's some other things you can look at, right? And no one wants to talk about that. Everybody's just either, yelling back and forth about how bad or what caused the high percentage in the Black community, and not saying that, where it's lower, even within the Black community, find the groups of people who are married, regardless of their income, that they tend to do better, right? Their kids tend to be less likely to go to prison, to drop out of high school, all these other things. And no one addresses that. So that's the reason why I call it race crazy, because we're crazy in the sense that everything is race, right? So somebody says, well, they dropped out of school, it's because the teacher was racist. There was violence, it's because they were racist. Well, the violence was between 2 Blacks, but still they had anger issues. They were traumatized because they're Black. I mean, they will find a way to answer Black no matter what.
Well, the thing that's sad for me is that, if everything is racist, then nothing is racist. And what I'm concerned about with all this focus, like strictly, it's racism. It's not, did racism occur? It's how did racism occur? That when something like, it's going to burn people are just going to be tired of hearing it. And I'm concerned that, like, when something really bad does happen, because it's inevitable, that most people are going to be so numbed to the whole idea that it's not going to get the attention it deserves, because, like you said, you can't legislate prejudice away. As long as people exist, prejudice will exist, right? That's where racism stems from.
Or it be something beyond race, right? That's what I'm saying. That's why I said I have a special affection for We Want Equality, because I know we're talking about race crazy, but you remember, you just read them both. So in We Want Equality, my point of that it's called We Want Equality, how the fight for equality gave way to preference. So during the civil rights movement and everything, Blacks were like, dude, don't put me down. Don't act like I can't compete. Level the playing field, get out of my way, and we'll be fine. That's all we want. Treat me the same, right? And now that's not what people are saying, right? People are saying, well, this is disproportionately X, so you need to have more Blacks on your board, more women on your board, more gays on your board, more women here. That's what they're pushing. So that's equality. You're not trying, that's not equality. You want preference. You want equity. They're even saying, I wrote in that book, 3 years ago, and now they're openly saying it. We want equity. Equity is not the same.
No, it's not.
So I opened the book, if nothing else, that what I, think that was so impactful in the book is that I opened the book with just history. It's like, what does it say? It says a brief history of the world or something.
Yes, it's equality, a brief history. And then you go through and you touch on every period and culture.
Right. And the
But you
point was
also
to
talk
say,
about like how slavery happened in every single culture. And
right, the
I
point was to
was,
say that people are flawed. So you're
yes,
never going to fix them. They're going to do things. So I break
no,
that. It's not even just slavery. I talk about crime. I talk
crime.
murder. I talk about genocide. I talk about war. I talk
Yep.
about, and I take it, it's not only all the bad things humans have done, but it's where they've done it. So it's not an
Mm-hmm.
American thing. This is what happened in Europe, in Asia, in China. This is what
Yep.
happened within Africa. And those, for Africa, I pull books written by African scholars who are still currently in Africa in 5 or 6 different countries, breaking down the the Ghanaian Empire, and breaking down Ethiopia and Egypt and Northern Africa and the Muslim part of Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. Talk about the Middle East. I talk about all that kind of stuff. And I talk about the things that people used to do. I talk about the Aztecs. I talked about the Mayans. And it's not to knock any one of them. It's fact. I talk about one of the things I like to bring up to people, and I say, okay, for the people, because there's some people who are so far left that they're just against, whether it's not a religion thing, whether you have to be a Christian Muslim, but they just think that all that moral stuff that you're pushing is a theology thing. I had a conversation with someone who said that, and said that the fact that you say that human nature is naturally flawed is a theological thing, and this isn't about race and people or religion, and people are just people. We can fix them because this, that, and I always say that the left think they can fix human nature. So this is what I asked him. I said, so you can fix human nature, but we've been doing these bad things as long as we've been here. All written evidence, since we've been writing, there's been evidence of things happen. And before they were writing, when the archaeologists find stuff, they find spears. Why were they making spears? Why would they need weapons? And then when I say it's the Hammurabi Code, which I write in the book, I forget the exact year, 500 BC or whatever. I said, so why did they need to write a list of laws if people just naturally did the right thing, right? Why would they need to say, don't beat your wife and don't stab your neighbor? So obviously somebody must have been beating his wife and stabbing a neighbor, right?
Exactly.
So the greater, like I said, I generally talk macro, and the biggest problem is I think the hard left today. I don't think I've mentioned this, so it's important to say when I say left, I'm not talking about liberals. I'm not
No,
talking
I
about.
know who you're talking about.
Okay, I'm talking about hard left. So they think they can fix human nature, right? They're like, I know we couldn't before, but now we're so technologically advanced, we're smarter. Enough people from the left and right have written enough books and gotten to the
I
psyche.
think
We
technology
really
has made it
understand
worse.
psychology. We can fix this. That's what they think.
I think technology's made it worse. I think
Right,
that,
in some ways,
I
right.
mean, seriously, people with mental disorders, I've been listening to this podcast about borderline personality. I think that technology has made it worse for some of these people because
And
back before technology, like if you were a nasty person, you had to say it to someone's face,
that's
like you had to see the impact of that. And you would have to be absolutely not human to be unaffected, or, psychopathic to not be affected by the reaction of that other human. Well, now you can just, your keyboard, like they can be as ugly as they want to be. You become what you feed your mind. So if you're spitting venom all day and you're just like just nasty, 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 that's going to have a psychological effect on you. It just is.
and unfortunately, it's the incentive. Where a lot of people on the right say the left is incentivizing crime and all that kind of stuff in the community, and we can debate that. The one thing we all must understand is that social media incentivizes it, because you get
Dopamine.
that shot of dopamine. You get that bonus that, hey, you get like, oh, I got a like. But if I just say I'm happy, I'm having a great day today, and five people say, I hope you all having a great day, and 15 people say I like it, and then you say I hate AOC, and then 10,000 people like it. Yay. Hate gives me more likes than positive stuff, so I do more negative stuff. I also try to stay clear of that, right? I mean, but yeah, so that's part of a problem. I mean, you have a point there that as much as it's added to society, it has taken away some. But
it's taken away like interpersonal reactions too, and I see that in my kid. Yeah. Like I'm sure you too. We were be home by when the lights are on. Like go out and play. Like there are no kids running around in my neighborhood.
Right, you can go outside. Like, no thanks. I got this thing. I don't need to go outside. So, but I to summarize, I truly believe every once in a while they're starting to say it, but before they were saying, I've been saying this at least 2 or 3 years, and people looked at me like I was crazy. They think they can fix humans. That's the problem. That is forget about, it's not, they talk about race a lot. Charles, you only got one problem that you can say is causing all this. The biggest thing, what is it? That the left thinks they can fix human nature.
Well,
Right?
that's
So
a
they
little
figure if they can, they
narcissistic,
figure if
isn't
they,
it? Like, I
well, think
mean,
about it, they figure if they go into schools and they can indoctrinate the kids,
oh
right?
God.
That,
Yeah,
that'll
that's why I'm homeschooling.
that'll set us up for the future. But what do we do about all the rest of these people here? Well, then the rest of the people, we can try to reprogram some of them, right? And then the people who resist being reprogrammed, we cancel them, right? And then we have a bunch of obedient people who follow along with what we want to do,
Oh yeah,
which is
that's
a brilliant plan, except this is where I come in with the human. So giving them the argument, let's say you do all this, indoctrinate all the kids, right? Reprogram as many people as you can, cancel the rest of us. The problem is human nature says that the people you reprogram the reprogramming will work. Because let's assume the people that we're only talking about the people it works on will work for that thing you're reprogramming, right? So they fix racism, they're not racist anymore. But no one's trying to reprogram theft, murder, jealousy, and all those things. So that stuff still happens, right? So you didn't really just end all the problems. Race is just not the problem anymore, but there's all these other things, misogyny. Then you're gonna have to try to fix that. There's still, I don't like short people, or I don't like people I consider unattractive, or why do pretty people have privilege, or why we have all these benefits for poor people. I don't like poor people, or I don't like the rich, so let's go after the rich, regardless of whether they're black or women or whatever,
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff. So they just
Exactly.
find other ways to do it because they don't see it, because they think they can fix human nature. And that's the problem. Your indoctrination won't stick. There's all these other things, but that's what they focus. And the
There's too
biggest
many
thing is when I
factors.
talk to them, what I tell them is, if I give you your argument, the problem is you trying to fix the problem, you focusing on that, it's making it take longer to fix the problem. So we talk about, let's say, an education gap in the Black community versus others. And Blacks are reading and doing math two grade levels behind.
Yeah, but is that
Okay.
racism or a cultural thing?
But here, let's assume it is racism. It's the only reason it's happening is because of racism. 100%. You don't get to argue because we're giving them the argument. 100% racism made that 11th grader read at an 8th grade level. Okay, so we get rid of racism. But don't we still have to teach him to read? Because he's already now in the 12th grade and he can't read.
Well, no,
So
because now they're going to dumb
fix the
everything
racism.
down. We've gotten rid of accelerated math because math is racist. We've gotten rid of all of these gifted programs and advanced programs because, Frederick Douglass said, knowledge makes man unfit to be a slave. So if we just make everybody stupid, we can dumb them all down, everyone across the board, and then we can control them, because people that are not that intelligent are easily controlled. They're easily manipulated. They're, run on high
They
emotion.
claim they want to help and they're not addressing the problem. They talk,
Exactly.
Here's the other one. They always talk about incomes and Black income, and wealth, and Black wealth is low or whatever. Well, the best way to get Blacks more income is to get them jobs, right? Get them better paying jobs. So they'll
How are we
say,
going to do that if we're letting a bunch of illegal immigrants come in?
Well, not only that, I say, okay, let's do that. How do you want to do it? And I shut up. And the first thing they say, well, we need to make these white boardrooms more Black. We need to diversify the job force. We need to have these people, push these people to hire more Blacks. And, that's right, you've read Race Crazy. So my guacamole example. So the problem is they're so focused on corporation. You must hire Blacks, you must hire Blacks, you must hire Blacks, you must hire Blacks, that they never spent any energy. This is a great example of what I mean by being race crazy and so focused on race. Let's assume they really do want to help. They don't want to mind control, they want to help. So I'm gonna help more Blacks get the jobs. I'm gonna go to all these corporations and force them to hire Black people. Except they were so focused on race that they never made sure more, fed the pipeline. So they never made sure more Black people had the skills to do the job. So when company X needs 10 more accountants, and they listen to BLM and all the people on the left, and they say, no, I heard them and I think they're cool. So I need 10 accountants. I'm gonna hire 8 of them who are Black and brown. Right? That's my commitment. Boom. They're going to find out they can't find them. Right? And it seems crazy when you say that, but I ask people, think of all the Black people you know, and all of them who are engineers, accountants, lawyers, and doctors. How many of them are unemployed? I've been asking that question for 3 years. I've yet to have somebody say one. They're all saying none. They all have jobs. So where are you going to find them? They're going to get jobs anyway. So what are you going to steal them from another corporation because you didn't create a job.
Yeah.
You just moved the guy from there. Now they need somebody else. So somewhere down the line, the last person who can't steal another, person from some other company and has to hire somebody new, and we've already done all the recruitment in college, is going to hire somebody white because they can't find anybody black because you didn't flood the pipeline with talented black people.
Yeah.
That's where your focus should be. Even if I give you your argument, you should be like, hey, there's not enough blacks in the corporations. Those people are pushing them to hire more blacks. What I'm going to do is focus on getting blacks interested in engineering and math and science and accounting and those types of things, and give them the
How are you
skills
going
that
to
they
do that
need.
if you get
So
rid
when
of
the
STEM?
opportunity comes, they'll get it.
How are you
What'd you
going to
say?
do that if you get rid of STEM?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
That's
I
true.
mean, seriously, if math is racist and we got to dumb that curriculum down and you want to get rid of STEM, then how are we going to do that exactly? Like,
We're not, because we're just going to talk about race. Yeah,
like
and
it
that's my
blows
point.
my mind because, the thing, and what really pisses me off last year when Obama and then Ibram X. Kendi, I have my own opinions on him, and Oprah came out talking about systemic racism and white privilege and all this other stuff. And I'm sitting there and then I'm thinking to myself, you people are pieces of shiza, because what you're basically saying, and especially Ibram X. Kendi, is all of these things are bad and they're white supremacy and the white man, and it needs to be torn down. So you're basically telling your community that we want to deny you access to the very thing that lifted us up.
Sure. I don't know why no one notices that. I don't know why no one knows. No, I think you need to sit on that for a minute. So blacks, let's assume the country's racist. The blacks who have somehow found a way to overcome the abundance of racism and made it successful, instead of telling people, yes, there's racism, but I know you can achieve anyway. I've done it. Here's the blueprint. What they say is, you won't achieve because this country's racist and it's not your fault. It's the racist white man. And then they collect their $25,000 check for an hour speech, Kendi, or they take their billions, Oprah, or they go to the $20 million mansion on the water, Obama, and then say, I've done good today. And they pat themselves on the back.
Well, that's the biggest kicker, is because we all know Oprah's story. She grew up dirt poor. She worked her way up, became one of the largest media moguls, that my generation knew. I mean, who do you think made you all that money?
Well, according to her, she said, somebody asked her that, and she said, before whites still have their whiteness.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I remember my mom tuning in.
I mean, I got a jet. No, I got a jet. I got a jet, but he's got whiteness.
But I mean,
I would trade my jet
nobody helped you
for his whiteness. No, you wouldn't.
Nobody helped you.
You know what you should do? You should ask black all your black friends and black people and your listeners and viewers. Ask your black friends, especially if you know some who are left leaning who talk this stuff, would they be willing? Because they always want to ask white people. Who was that asked? Was it Mark Lamont Hill asked Chris Rufo if how he described whiteness, or if he would trade or something like that.
I watched it. Yeah.
No, ask black people if they would trade. I don't know a black person that said they would trade with a white person, but you trade with, if you can go back again, grow up and be white, which is, they all like, no. Why? It's so bad to be black. Because they don't think it's bad to be black. They don't.
But the best part is like,
it's great. It's great to be black in America.
You're talking about whiteness. First off, what is that? Because I don't even know what it is.
It's whatever they define it as. It's evil, is what it is.
You want to know why I don't? Because I wake up every day and I don't think about my skin color. And then I know, of course,
well, you have the advantage to do that.
You have the privilege, the advantage to do
so
that.
You don't need to.
No, because I don't attach my identity to it. When I wake up in the morning and I get up and I go out into the world, my heart, my soul, my outlook on the world is, I view the world through a lens of love. I go out and I do my best and I try to do a little bit better than I did the day before. And I treat everybody with respect and kindness, regardless of who you are. If you smile at me, I'm smiling back. If you say hi to me, if you treat me with respect, I'm going to treat you with respect. I'm going to treat you with respect regardless anyway. I don't have any malice towards anybody. And I feel like, now we're all focused on race all the time because every election cycle, it's got to be mustered up, because if the Democrats didn't have racism to run on, they wouldn't have a platform. But I know I grew up in a very culturally diverse background, in a culturally diverse neighborhood in Detroit. Like we had, old Romanian families, Hispanic, Black families. Like it was, and I didn't have any issues with anybody. Nobody ever bothered me. You know, and I didn't bother anyone else. Like, I'm just like, you do you and I'll do me. And I think people are in each other's business too much now.
Well, I don't, but I mean, I heard which, how you go about your day and it sounded fine, but I think there's something missing. I didn't hear the, the examples of atonement or what you're doing to kind of,
Because I don't feel guilty. I don't
no, but
have
you need
any.
to be doing something specifically and tangible for Black people. I mean, it's written. I mean, that's what they. I mean, I'm sorry, but it needs to be tangible. You need to
Well,
come
let's just put
home
it this
and
way.
write it down.
I would hope that the students that I have, the ones that happen to be Black, are inspired by me at some point during the 15 weeks that I have them before they move along to the next class. You know, but I love them and they know. You ask all of my students, white, Hispanic, and Black, does Miss Cat love you? They're going to be like, yes, she does, because I do. I love them. I tell them every day how much I love them. I support them. I'm there for them. I have heard stories from some of my girls that just literally take like, oh my God, and they still show up for class the next day and they do the work. Like I have no white guilt. I don't have any white guilt. I just don't, because no, I think that's ridiculous. I'm not going to feel guilty for something that I didn't do. I've done enough stuff to myself. I'm not taking on anymore. So all I can do is educate myself, try to share my knowledge with my students. Like I said, I try not to get too political. But you know, when we talk, when we're out, you know, on our breaks and stuff, and I just drop little tidbits of knowledge and I let them do the rest of the talking. And they're pretty much, most of my girls are right on point with you. They see it. They see all of it.
Wow, it's good to hear.
Yes, it is. And the funny thing is you said something about, you know, ask, you know, if you have Black liberal friends. No, I got dumped by all my white liberal friends last year. Every single one of them. All my Black friends are still around. They don't care who I voted for. You know, most of them just dismiss my Facebook page when I go on, you know, down my rabbit hole and start posting stuff, but they don't care. They just love me for me. They've made no judgments. So.
You driving this train? What else you got?
Oh, I'm driving this train. What else I got? This might be a little touchy, but I've always kind of been curious about this question. I think you talked about it. Was it an interview? I listen to so much stuff. I'm having a hard time collecting where I feel in terms of the behavior. I think you talked about it in your book in Race Crazy about behavior with reacting to police officers. You know, I saw a lot of stories last year, obviously, you know, parents talking to their children about, you know, if they have an interaction with cops and this, that, and the other. And, you know, like a video of this woman telling her young Black child, I think she was 3 or 4, that her skin color could get her killed. And the little girl crying. And as a parent, I was absolutely appalled by that, because why would you do that to your child? But do you think that doing that creates a form of PTSD and mistrust in authority?
Well, I don't know about the PTSD, but it definitely creates mistrust. I don't see the benefit of it. What is it supposed to prove? So you're saying that there's a chance that just because you're Black, that police may treat you different. Okay. But you're not saying that when you say that. You're saying it's going to happen. You're creating an irrational fear in a 3 or 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Because let's be real. Even if you know, you have to give them their argument, because otherwise you just waste your time arguing about surface stuff and you never get to the root of the problem. So, okay, police are hunting down Black people in the race. More than 90% of the time, they are adult men, correct? Very few of them are 13 to 16. So even if it were true, why would you tell your 3 to 4-year-old? It's not like they're hunting down 3 to 4-year-olds. So they're all racist, but they wait till you get older before they kill you. So why would you tell your 3 to 5? So you don't even want And I'm not even that I'm buying it, but I'm saying even if it's true, you don't want to maintain your kid's innocence as long as you can. You want a 3 or 4-year-old kid to be afraid. And so every time they see a cop, they start crying, you know, and then they build this stuff up, and then they have negative views by cops. And then they have negative things to say to the cop when the cop's just in line getting his lunch. And then and the kid is either crying or now that you've been saying it for years. So now the kid's like 8 and he's like, I hate you, cop, because I know you hate me. Right. So why would you want to do that? I mean, it is a form of abuse, I would say.
Well, I mean,
Now,
that's what all this CRT stuff is. I mean, that's why, that's primarily what I talk to my girls about, because my girls are beautiful humans. And I know that they're raising beautiful little humans. And I want to make sure that they are aware. I'm like, pay attention to what your children are learning. Because like you said something, innocence. There's a very small window that your children have that. And the day that disappears, it's like the light goes from their eyes. They start becoming very aware of the world around them. So yeah, why wouldn't you want to preserve that? And I feel like that's what CRT is trying to do to, like, they're, you know, in kindergarten, you want to teach children to notice this stuff. When they don't care. They don't care. They're like, oh, I see another kid. You want to play? Like, that's all kids care about. But now you want to teach this, you want to take us backwards. Back to desegregating, or back to segregating, and, you know, Black only spaces. And I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? Like, what is wrong? Why are we doing this? Safe spaces. It's absolutely, I don't understand how somebody hasn't shaken them and said, you do realize that we got rid of this, right? That's what the civil rights movement was about. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, that was the whole point. You know, the book, the third piece is like, it highlights BLM in 1619, but the overarching thing is progressive racism.
Yes.
And that's why I call it progressive racism, because it's the same thing. It's just racism. Whatever you look up a definition of racism, they're doing that. But it's progressive racism because they think that even though I say and do the exact same things as the alleged, you know, as the Bull Connors and the racists of the 1800s, my intentions are good. See, they hang too much on the intent, right? Not that intent doesn't matter at all, but they hang so much on intent. And the problem with that will be both from the racism things that they do, but even the other things that they're doing. They'll say, well, you know, you talked about Moynihan and war and poverty and all that stuff. So most people, by all measures, most people will admit that it failed. But they don't care because the intentions were good, right? We had good intentions. We wanted to help poor people. So yes, it didn't really help, but we wanted to, so it doesn't matter. Same thing with the racism. Yep. So they'll say, so I just say, because a lot of them will say it's not racism. I say, okay, let's just do a test. 1830, a racist like John Calhoun would say, actually, slavery is benevolent, right? Because we're actually helping them because Blacks are inferior and they can't do things or compete at the same level as whites, right? So having slaves is a good thing because we're basically, I love my slaves and I'm taking care of them because they can't take care of themselves. Imagine what their lives would be like if we just ended slavery and let them live on their own. They couldn't do that on their own. They need us.
Yeah, they talk about that in the authoritarian. They talk about that in the authoritarians.
White and black.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
They'll all say that's racist. But now today, somebody can say, well, Blacks are, you know, aren't graduating high school, they're living in poverty, and they're overrepresented in the criminal justice system. And that's not fair. So we need to fix that. And the only way we can fix that is if we do something for them. So we as the white liberals today will say, that's all based on racism. And so Blacks are, you know, struggling in these ways. And so we need to focus on Blacks and we need to help Blacks because how else are they going to compete or prove their status without us? It's the exact same thing, John.
We're gonna vote for and put the man in office whose crime bill was primarily responsible for putting most of those men in prison for nonviolent offenses. Like,
right, but they're saying that, but they're saying the same thing Calhoun said. They're saying Blacks are oppressed and Blacks are worse off and Blacks are worse because of racism, but because they can't compete, right? Because they can't. Because, you know, I wrote an article about this and it was a big deal. It's like everybody's focusing on the negative, that we get lost, the truth gets lost. So, and to the point that blacks start to believe it. I asked black people, you know, successful black, what percent of blacks, I asked everybody, but the black answers are really interesting. What percent of blacks live in poverty, right? What percentage of blacks graduate from college? And best, what percentage of blacks commit violent crime? Oh my God, the answers will shock you. Everybody's numbers are off, but the more left you are, the further off you are. And that's what they don't get. So let's see. Let's try Cat. Give Cat the test. What percentage of blacks live in poverty?
See, I'm really bad at percentages and statistics. I'd say like 1-2%.
Poverty? I wish.
I don't know.
Well, most people I've asked guess between 30 and 60.
I'd say
Right?
closer to 30.
And the average is usually somewhere closer to 50%. When I say violent crime, they say between 10 and 20. And when I say college graduation, they say between 5 and 12. Well, the poverty number for blacks is about 20%. Higher than it
Okay,
should
so
be.
I was
That means
closer.
80%
I was
of
said
us are,
closer to 30. So I
yeah,
was.
which means 80% of us are not in poverty. But what they also don't know is that for whites, you know, they would think 2, 3, 4% is 10. So, you know, even with their whiteness is 10, so you're not going to get it less than 10, right? When you focus on race, because Asians are even 10 now, and they're outperforming whites, but the poverty level is still 10, right? So there's something about, you know, living in areas and living in poverty, and that's what happens, right? 20. College graduates is somewhere around, at least at least an associate degree is like 34%. Now whites are closer to 50, but whites aren't even 50. That's see, because if whiteness is so great, you have to compare it to white. So most people would think whites are like 65% to 70%, and blacks are like 12, like I said, 7 to 12%. But it's not that big of a difference. It's more like 32 to 48. But most people don't even realize, because you're talking to academics and upper middle class people, they don't realize that the average white person doesn't have a degree either, not a bachelor's degree. So you're looking at it the way you're fixing it, because the numbers are so skewed the way you look at it. You're like, well, all white people have a bachelor's degree and no black people. Well, no, there is a gap, but you think the gap is like this, but the gap is more like this, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to fix it, that's fine. But the way you fix this is a lot more pragmatic than the way you fix this. This is when you say tear the system down. And my favorite one is violent crime. You ready for this? Hold on to your hats. The percentage of blacks that commit violent crime, 2.5%.
Was that
2.5%?
2.5%?
So yes, for whites it's less, because most people don't commit violent crime. But that's a really low. That means 97% of blacks, regardless of the 20. Keep in mind, 20% of blacks live in poverty. 2.7% of all blacks commit violent crimes. Yet we're spinning a narrative that when I ask people, why do you think people commit violent crimes? They say poverty. So even if all the people who commit violent crime are poor, which they're not, but let's assume that all of them are poor, that still means 2.5% to 20%. Still means a vast majority of the people who are poor don't commit violent crimes. So 3 out of 20, so you got 15% committing violent crime, you get 85% of them not committing violent crime. So if they're black and they're poor, and 85% of all black people living in poverty don't commit violent crimes, why would you say that people who commit violent crime is just because of poverty? It could be that and other factors, I'm not saying that, but they say poverty is the reason why they're Jean Valjean, stealing bread. They're just trying to eat. Oh, the other 85% don't want to eat. I mean, they're not robbing people. So it's senseless. That's why you have to. So I look at it like, so it's the saddest thing that I get is when I get blacks on the left saying that my message, disagree with it all you want, but I'm literally saying, so I say, stop saying we're all poor. Stop saying we're all violent. Stop saying we're dropouts. Stop saying that we can't do things on our own. Stop saying that we don't have, you know, power and agency and things that we can do. You know, we should go out and we should help our community. We should mentor. We should do this. We should find out what the problems are and fix it. And their response to that is that I am just a white apologist. So I'm against
or a mouthpiece for white supremacy, like they said about the Virginia new lieutenant governor, or better yet, Larry Elder, the black face of white supremacy.
Right.
And these are white progressives saying these things and getting away with it.
But even with them, as silly as that is, it's absolutely, I'm not defending it, it's stupid. But at least they're making a political attack. These are people running for office, and we're just trying to beat the right and beat the Republicans. Okay, fine. But here I am, not running for office, not even mentioning the word Republican or Democrat. I'm saying there are things we can do. Blacks aren't as bad off as you're claiming. And those who are, we can help if we focus on race, I said race, and other things, right? It just can't be only race. And their reply is the things that you said. So I'm like, so you're mad at me. So I'm not pro-Black because I say positive things about Black people. What is wrong with your mind? So I say positive things about Black people, and ergo, that means I am a white supremacist. I mean, that's the saddest thing, right? So you can't even, so if you don't get into this boat of we can't do until the white man changes their mind, then you're not for us. I'm saying that I can control. I'm not even arguing with you about whether the whites are racist or not. Really, the difference is we know people are racist, white and Black people are racist. So the only thing we're really debating is what percentage. You say it's 90, I say it's down here, right? But we're all saying it happens. And the other difference is you think the solution to all the problems in the Black community is to focus on race. I said race is a part. So racism may be part of the reason why Blacks' incomes are low, but it's not the only reason. But that's the only thing. So I'm not even saying it's not one of the reasons. That's the only reason you want to address. So you're like, let me.
They don't want to take into
race,
any no other considerations,
and that's the
socioeconomic status, like education, things like
personal
that. Personal choices, you know, people's perception, because everybody perceives things differently. So I mean,
it's like the gender thing, right? They'll say Black women, I mean that women make less, and that's because of
no, that's
sexism, right? And misogyny. I'm like, some of it might be, but maybe some of the reasons that the problem is you're saying you're doing all to all, which is not proper. I mean, I don't know who taught you math, because you can't say all women make this on average, all men make this on average, therefore 77, 69. No.
We need more women in engineering. It's like, did you ever think that maybe women just aren't interested in that? Like,
yeah, but you need to, but if you talk about the income gap though, you need to compare people in the same job. You can't compare all women, all men. You need to say women cardiologists versus men cardiologists. How much do they make? But you don't do that. You just say all women, all men. Right. How are you going to force women to be engineers if they don't want to be? But to their, at least with women, they have girls who code, and we need more women in STEM. They won't even afford that to Blacks. They don't do that for Blacks. What they say to Blacks is we need to teach cultural math, culturally relevant pedagogy. We need to teach them in a way that they can get it, because they're not smart enough to learn math the same way.
Yeah, that's so insulting. And why don't other people get it? Like,
that's John Calhoun right there. That is textbook John Calhoun. Blacks,
it's actually
I'm trying to help.
Most of that stuff is Hegelian. It comes from the German school of thought, and they brought it over here during the 1800s.
That's where all the academics went to school. So look, so they're saying.
Thank you, James Lindsay.
So they're saying that Blacks can't. We all want Blacks to do better in math. I do, you do. Let's help them. And I say, well, why don't we give them some mentoring, some tutors? No, that's not going to help. This is what we need to do. Blacks learn in a special genetic way.
Oh my God.
So we can teach math the same way to the white folks, but to the Blacks, we have to teach them in a way that they will learn. English, we should take Shakespeare out and bring Jay-Z in. And when Jay-Z raps to them, then they'll understand. Huh, interesting. So how have Blacks been learning math, for years leading up to? How did we ever have mathematicians and economists and things of that nature? Oh, they like just Thomas got lucky. Sowell? No, they just got lucky though. That's just a few flukes, but that's because they're believing that most Blacks are uneducated. They don't know the 30 some odd percent number, and that's the problem. If you think 90% of Blacks are high school dropouts or something, then of course you're going to take that approach. Then they might be right. If that number were true, if most Blacks were dropping out of high school across the board, then yeah, you would have to do something radical, like teach them different. I would agree. If most Blacks were committing violent crimes, like 53% of Blacks committed violent crimes, then yes, you need to do something specifically to Blacks to help them, because there's a Black problem. There's something genetically wrong with Blacks that make them commit violent crime. But they don't. All these people on the right who say, well, they're only 13% of the population, but they commit 50% of the murders. Yeah, but the 50% of the murders are committed by 2.5% of the people. So you can't say that most Blacks, so most of us haven't committed crime, just like most of you haven't committed crime. So you're twisting the numbers to fit something you're trying to prove, and the left does it far worse, but they all do it. So, but it's because they have been, kind of brainwashed in a sense by the media constantly telling them. Like, go back to when we were younger. You watch TV shows and everybody on the so I'm a white guy and I grew up
You
in all
talk
white
about the
neighborhoods.
Cosby Show, like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I loved that show. Like,
Yeah, but they were before them. They were an anomaly, and everybody, even the stuff that was positive, the good times and all that. But they lived in the projects, and you watch crime shows, and all the black people were drug addicts and criminals, right? And then you live in your whole lily white neighborhood and your white circle where there's no black people around you. You turn on TV, you see that on TV shows, and then you watch the news, and there's a constant perp walk of black people. Why wouldn't you think they were violent? You're wrong, but that's because they feed. So then people say, that fact imitates art and back to forth. So then they see this stuff on TV. So then they make movies about it. Then they want people to understand the slave experience. So they make more movies about slavery. And they think that's uplifting. But then white people just say, well, maybe they were all slaves because that's what I see. You think a white person gonna see it and it's like, oh, that was really bad. I should give them something. They're gonna be like, man, all the black people were slaves. It's terrible, right? So you keep doing that. And so now we got the 1619 Project where they said, we need to teach more slavery in school, but they can't read. How about, okay, I will concede that you can teach them slavery if you get them up to reading and math levels.
yes,
So when they can do math and reading at their
yes.
grade level, then we could just drop all the academic stuff and only do slavery. But up until
Because
that point,
I would be willing to bet that the majority of crime committed, not just by blacks, but whites, is due to a lack of being able to read, illiteracy, like not being able to function in the world. Because it's really hard to understand things if you can't read and you have no comprehension of the world around you. And I mean, maybe from a psychological standpoint, this might make a young man who's got testosterone surge angry. But then his pride and ego, because children are, younger people are ego-centered, are going to be like, oh, I don't need to know how to read. And or they'll get angry if you make it and like, hey, do you need some help with? Oh, no, I'm fine. Like there's a lot of factors.
Yeah, don't call
like,
me out in front of the other kids too, right?
Exactly. So I think that if we went back, first off, they don't teach reading the same as I'm sure you and I learned. Like I learned by phonics when I took my son to kindergarten, for the little, thing assessment. They're like, well, he only knows like this many of his sight words.
Sight words, yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't teach him how to read that way. So
and you should teach them a reading by a combination of phonics and stories, like actually reading stories. And then when they can understand the story, they'll say, well, what did that word mean in the story, right?
So how many years, like how many generations do we have right now that, learn like that, not like we did, because when you have to sound a word out and you're not sure of what it means, that inspires curiosity. So then you're going to look it up and then have a better understanding. Like how many generations of kids have come out of these schools, percentage wise, that are functionally illiterate. They're just literate enough to get by. And that's it.
And let's go back to the racism thing. Even if I give the left their argument and say everything's racist, some things you can't control. So they can control, get the government involved, whatever they want. How can you, one of the advantages that is really educated people, but they want to call it race. I'll say, what the advantage these upper middle class white people have? Now, how are you going to steal this? You can take away their money. You say, so they went to college, they're college educated, right? So they have a baby. That's the way you have a baby, people just go. They have a baby. And so they're playing Mozart and they're humming to the baby. So now the baby's a toddler, right? So they're 18-month baby and they start reading and they're reading. And then they get another book and they read a story. It's got pictures and all the funny little animals, but they're reading. Then they get another book and they're reading. So now the kids 2 and they're reading. And now they're 3 and they're reading a little bit more common. And they're reading. They're 4. So when they start school, I would assume that, I don't got to look at the stats, but I don't need stats for everything. Something's common sense. So the average poor, white or black, whose parent is not that educated and not focused on reading these books and don't have a lot of books in their home, right, is reading their kid. By the time he started in kindergarten, read. I mean, they've heard some nursery rhymes and some stories and watched videos, but actually physical books and looking at the words and following through the words, 10 books. Let's call it 10, 15 books. The upper middle class white family has read 80 books. How are you going to legislate that?
Yeah.
Even if you legislate putting books in the house, you're not going to make the parents read them to them.
Nope.
So that's the first thing. Your kids should start school already know how to read. I was even further incentivized because we moved from Chicago to New York, and in Chicago they do the cutoff where you're in Michigan. I think it was the same, right? So like if your birthday's after September, you go to the next year.
Yep.
And in New York is calendar year, so he went from 3K for a couple months and in kindergarten. So all his friends in Chicago are in kindergarten, he's in first grade. So he's the younger one in class. So I'm like, they're going to already be more advanced in just because they're almost a year older. So it was even more, I was already thinking that it was important to focus on that, but even more so. So now it's just funny to watch it. My son's 5, and one of his favorite phrases is he'll hear me say something. He'll say the word, and he'll go, to the dictionary.
I love it.
He'll go to the dictionary.
Love it.
Right.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Right. He's 5. Right. So, I was, helping an organization, award some scholarships to some kids. It was a competition. And they all had to write an essay. So he's like, what are you doing? I'm reading essays. So everybody else, I do that too, but it's just funny in this one case, everybody else is reading, your kid books and your what do you call it? 3 Little Pigs and all that stuff. And I'm reading some high school senior with straight A's essay as to why they should get the scholarship. So he's just sitting there. He's like, what is entrepreneurship? He was 4 then.
No.
So, I mean, how you gonna force that into somebody's house if they're not doing it, or if they can't read it, if they graduated without
well,
reading
you have to want to break it. I mean,
but I know what I'm saying. But if I graduated and I got passed through and I didn't read at the grade level, and then I went and got a job where I don't read all the time, so I can read, but I don't read a lot, and I can't read that well.
You do what Ben Carson's mother did. I mean, Ben Carson's mother was illiterate, and she had her 2 boys. And what she did, he tells a story, and I thought about that. I was like, holy crap, that's amazing. 2 boys in school, and they were kind of mediocre. And because she was illiterate, she was like, not my babies. So she limited their TV time to 1 hour a week. And then they had to read a book a week and write a report. Now, she couldn't read it. They'd have to read it to her. But she made them do this because she saw the importance, and she knew the importance of being able to read and doing well in school, even though she couldn't. And yeah, they both went, like, he went on to graduate, like, I think it was summa cum laude, and become like one of the world's leading brain surgeons for children. Like, you have to want to break it. You have to want to break it.
I mean, that's the reason why I was doing an event in DC this weekend, another thing that we were doing for kids that we brought there. And we, a certain number of people made the final. So we had a competition, and then the finalists got flown to DC. And of the finalists, I mean, all of them didn't obviously place, but all the people went, and I introduced parents, and I'm like, where do you go to school? Where are you from? And a lot of them were homeschooled. And then, I was sitting at a table with a group of people, and I said, I got 2 reasons why I think that homeschool kids do so well. And they said, why? I mean, it's the same. One of the reasons is the same reason the public school kids who are really poor that do well. It's because you need involved parents. So the fact, if your parents are involved, you do better. If you're not that bright, if you're poor, if you're rich, if your parents are involved, my mom wasn't illiterate like Ben Carson's mom, but my mom didn't do well in school, but she used to act like she knew the work. She's like, you need to go check this work again, or you need to do this. She would push you.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. I said, if the parents are involved, the kids are going to do a little bit better anyway. Boom. Some of them are going to have a natural talent. And if the parents are involved, they elevate. So the very nature that you're homeschooling your kid means you're involved. So you already move up there. And then the second piece I said, and one of the homeschooling moms smiled and said, you're right. And I said, I don't think people openly, I've never heard anybody openly say it, but I think differently, right? I can assess the situation really good. I said, the other reason why they do well? They say, why? Chip on the shoulder. And people are like, what do you mean? Because it's different now since COVID and more people do it, but it used to be a lower percentage of people doing it. And what would the people who don't do it say? They'll say, well, they say social interaction that they're concerned with, or they'll say, well, how do we know that they're getting an adequate education, because they're not getting the educated professional who went to the hoity-toity school that's teaching them. So how can just some random woman teach her kid, right? So they kind of act like that. So there's and I say, and I turned to two of the homeschooling mothers, and I said, I don't know if you openly think this, but I know somewhere in the back of your mind, you're thinking, so they think because I didn't go to education school and get my degree from some fancy education school that I can't teach my kid. So now somewhere deep inside, I'm gonna push them even harder just to prove that my kid can excel without what they think they're lacking because I'm doing it. And they looked at me and say, yeah, that's true. There's a bit of that where we're like, well, I want to prove that I can teach my kid on par at that age of somebody else who's whatever. And so they push him harder, and that's why. And you gotta say, it's not even just a race thing, because one of the girls who won first class was Black. So it's not race, but she was homeschooled, right? So it's not whether they're Black or white. It's that if they're homeschooled, those kids,
and that's
and they can put more in them because they don't, in public school, even the good ones, they're like, everything's regimented. So you got an hour of this course, an hour of this course. So maybe you don't need at homeschool, as long as you learn the material, maybe you can be more fluent. You can say, this story we're working on kind of ties to this. So I can teach you English and math, or I can teach you history and math at the same. Where it's not like, well, math class, we're gonna talk and do this, and then you're gonna go to the next class. So
Yeah,
I mean, they can do more in 3 hours than you do in school in 6 or 7,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
I mean,
That's another thing that's going up too. I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't know, I remember the statistic. I think it's, yeah, but the numbers for children belonging to young Black family, like the homeschooling is going up. They're
oh yeah,
pulling their
I mean,
kids out.
I didn't realize how many of my friends pulled their kids out of school in the last, and some of them were
Oh,
doing it
yeah.
even before COVID. But since all this CRT stuff, I got like
Oh,
5
yeah.
people instantly pull their kid out of school.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just going to keep going because they're just doubling down.
Yeah.
They're doubling down on all the nonsense. And I'm like, please just keep doing it.
Well,
Because
I'm getting closer. I got an email from the school saying that they were going to be teaching culturally relevant math, whatever that is. They said in 2023, so that buys me a little time. But I've had 2 meetings with the schools over some things they taught already. And, you know, that's why I write in the book about, we got to at least get to that, the 1619 project. That's my biggest push. And you mentioned CRT, and I kind of go away from that. And people ask why, you know, because you read the book, and I rarely mentioned CRT. And the only thing I did, I think, was explain why I didn't talk about it in the book. And I want people to understand that it's because I think the CRT debate has gotten to the point. I like that it's gotten people engaged. I don't begrudge Roof on the rest of them for fighting that. It's an uphill battle. They're having some wins, but we'll see what happens long term. But my point is that you've seen the debate, so tell me if I'm wrong. What it gets reduced to is CRT is bad. You don't even know what CRT is. They're teaching CRT in school. We're not teaching CRT. So they end up debating
and people that aren't looking,
right, they end up debating the definition and whether it's there or not, so you never get to the core of the problem. So what I do, I just wrote a recent piece in Newsweek talking about this. And I say, look,
I read it.
So I was like, look, I don't know what whether they're teaching CRT in schools or not. Maybe they're not. I don't care. But what I do know is they're teaching problematic stuff, and it's bad, and people are right to be upset. And then I say, let me give you some receipts, and I click. And like I said, nothing from the right. It's the teachers union. It's the schools in all these states, and they're saying stuff like, you know, what they're saying. And so my point is, I can prove that this is in the schools. I can prove that it's toxic, and we won't have to have that debate. So what I did was I wrote a chapter on every essay in the 1619 project, and thousands of school teachers. So my goal, you all need to help me, is to get my book into every school that's teaching 1619 and say, fine, if Lindsay wins, we'll see what happens, but they got to fight. So Lindsay and Rufo fight to ban CRT. The Goldwater Institute's doing great work to at least get transparency so we know what you're teaching. I come up the middle and say, look, while they're working on that, all the schools that are teaching 1619 project, give the students my book, teach an essay from them, teach what I write. They both learn critical thinking skills because they have to look up and research and see who's right and who's wrong, and then give their opinions on both. So they learn the whole, because the whole argument is we just want honest history. So you can't have honest history if you omit stuff. So I take the essay, I acknowledge what is true, and then I say, but you left this out, or you twisted this to make it some other conclusion that's not true. And I explain it. So you can look at both and say, when they say traffic, I say traffic, is it true? The whole Pete Buttigieg and his whole, you know, roads are racist. So I say, this is what he said, this is what they quote, because they have an essay about that. Capitalism, this is what they say, this is what I say. You know, criminal justice, they say, I say, which is true. And you can look it up. I cite it, it's heavily cited. And so yeah, you should read the 1619 project. It's already in the school, and then read this. So that's my big push, is to try. And I got some people trying to help me out, but every little bit helps. Talk to your school board, go to people and say, hey, get this book. If you don't get but 2 copies, and you have them in all your classrooms that are teaching this, you know, I mean, ideally you can pass them out to the students, but yeah, you get to use it. They can take quotes from it. They can put it up. They can put the citations up. I know a lot of these people have Surface and laptops that they can go to, and you can go to the source and say, well, who's right? Did Blacks in 1870 go to the polls to elect the first Black U.S. senator? I say no. Nicole Hannah-Jones says yes. Who's right? It's me, by the way. Senators weren't elected by popular vote until 1913. Look it up.
It's funny because you said, oh my God, just where'd it go? Why does this keep happening to me? Okay, never mind. I'll come back around to it. You have a website, right?
Yes, necharleslove.com.
Oh, what about the one about excellence in education?
Seeking educational excellence, yes. I'm rebooting the site, but yeah.
What is that about?
Well, it's interesting because the organization was started before all the madness got so bad. So it was like my normal approach. It was simply, look, there are problems, race, whatever the problem is. The bottom line is we have an educational crisis that we need to fix. So I believe, and we believe, that opportunity is the best way to get there. So if we focus on the things we can control, racism there, but I can't control that. I can't teach white people not to be racist, but I can teach you math. I can teach you critical thinking skills. I can get you interested in STEM so you go down that path. So that was the goal. We had to shift after George Floyd died because everybody else started to focus on all this other stuff and race and putting all this stuff in the schools. So you really think I can go somewhere now, left, right, or center, and talk to people about education, say, hey, we need more Blacks in science. They're like, no, we're in the middle of a fight of CRT. Get out of here. We'll worry about that later. So we had to kind of shift and focus on this. But ideally, the goal was to get people, to spend money to train, mentor, to give people college prep courses, get donors to raise some money for that. So when they say Blacks can't score as high as on the SAT because the white kids get college prep, instead of eliminating the SAT, just give the Black kids college prep. So that's the kind of thing we were focused on doing, focusing on the things that matter and the things we can control, improving education, giving them critical thinking skills so they don't just assume that what anybody, including what I say, is factual. They learn how to look up their own research. So that's what we do. And, it's an uphill battle now, probably more so than ever, but I think it's important.
Hopefully the tide will turn, because I hope this can't go on forever. Like, I really do. I remember what I was going to say now. So I had a friend say to me when I was like talking about the CRT thing, and they're like, oh, so you just don't want, history taught. And I'm like, these people don't even want to teach history. They just want to focus on one thing. That's not history. I mean, we can focus on slavery, we can focus on segregation and all of that, but if we're just focusing on the bad and we're not looking at the good things that came out of all of those things, that's not history. Better yet, history. Why aren't we talking? Like, why do we have Black History Month? Why is it Black history incorporated into history? Because it's American 100%. History. It's American history. It's not Black history, white history. It's American history. And I haven't gotten into that book yet by Tillman, but I'm seriously looking forward to it. But again, like I had told you, if you can text me later or tweet, one of my students is very interested in that right. Along with maybe a book about, historical innovators and stuff. Like I told her, well, look up Booker T. Washington, look up these things, tell your children about this. But yeah, she's just like, Miss Cat, you know so much. I'm like, Miss Cat's taken a special interest in all of this since last year because something just doesn't smell right.
Well, the one thing you said is most important that people need to understand is there's nothing positive in the 1619 project. No. So if you read that, and you got to think as an adult, better. You'd be like, well, we don't need to get these people. I got the same argument you got, but the other argument when I point out there's no positive, I say, well, you can go somewhere else for that. Okay, let's walk through some logic. I'm a 14-year-old Black kid in the school, 15-year-old Black kid in the inner city. I don't know any of this stuff. The teachers are coming to teach me. They teach me 1619. They make me angry and all this other stuff. Do you honestly believe that kid is going to go somewhere to do research to see if they're right or see if they're omitting things or to try to learn it in context when their teacher that they trust is not teaching them in context? What do you mean go somewhere else to get it? There's nowhere else to go. I mean, it's out there, but no 15-year-old is going to go say, let me see if there's any positive that ever happened in America. My teacher taught me
unless
all
they're
bad.
A peculiar child like you.
Like yeah, but not the average, right? The average kid's going to say, my teacher said it's all bad, so it must be all bad.
Yep. That's that
alone is a reason not to teach it.
That's what Deb talks about too, is it's like, it's pedagogy that it's a praxis that they're teaching from. It's not the specifics. So it's never going away. Like all these victories they think they're getting with, we got these bills. You're not getting rid of anything.
They're just going to change the name of what they're teaching and keep teaching it.
But it doesn't even matter anyway, because it comes from the teacher. The teacher was in college and indoctrinated into this mindset. And again, just like with racism, you can't legislate or get rid of this stuff. It's already there. So yeah, I have a feeling that the homeschool nation of parents are about to take over because they're going to realize that there's nothing that can be done. The schools, the public education system as a whole needs to go. Like the Prussian model, little prisons, like it needs to go.
But you mentioned public. I mean, I don't have much time left, so I gotta say this. One of the things I push back on the right on is every time I have a guest talking about education, I say, we talk about the problem. I say, what's the solution? They say, they weren't saying homeschooling at the time. They say school choice. And I say, yeah, but because you all ignored schools for so long, now the private schools are just as bad. So where you go? So they get this voucher. Where are they gonna go? Even the religious schools are all woke, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so they don't have anywhere to go. So you say, I just want to point that out. You said public. It's just schools now.
Yeah. Well, maybe a coalition of parents can start a little like they used to before all of this started, little church schools.
Right.
I mean, build up well, that's another thing too. Some of the churches go, oh, it's just everybody's going woke.
Because everybody's gone race crazy.
Oh yeah, everybody, yeah, exactly.
Pick it up at your store, local stores.
I look at it this way. It's like I try to tell people, like, one of the things, that I learned when I got well was if it emotionally triggers me, I'm being manipulated.
Take a step back. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I try to do. So I'm going to give you a little closing statement before we leave, because I know you got to go. And I think my kid just woke up. I heard him say, "Hey, Mom." So anything you want to say to everyone? Buy his book.
Yeah, buy.
See that book behind him?
Yep. Don't buy one, buy two. Buy two.
Buy two and give one to a friend.
Yes. And that truly, I think the only way we turn this, the most important thing, you take nothing else away, is that you can't just be people who consider themselves right of center or conservative. And you need to talk to everybody. You're not going to win it at the ballot box. So you need to go to your circle. The people who canceled you because of Thanksgiving and all that kind of stuff, go back to them. But don't talk politics. Don't say, well, look at what the Democrats are doing. Oh, you're going to la, 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 la. That's what they're going to say. You ask them questions. You're like, so what do you think about this? The CRT debate. Man, Lindsay and I'm bad. It's like, yeah. And when they say something bad about you, say, yeah. I can see why you say it. But do you think teachers should be asking high school kids their sexual preference? Well, no, I don't think that. Why does that happen? That's not really happening. No, yeah, here's proof. Do you think that people should be telling you that because you're Black, you have to learn differently? You ask them, you do research, or read my book, is there, on the things that they're doing. And then just ask people, is that okay? Because if they're leftists, they're going to say, yes, fine. You just let it go. You can't win that. But liberals will be like, well, no, I don't think that's okay. Well, that's what people are pushing back against. And they'll say, oh, so everybody, your Uber driver, your store clerk, your coworkers, you need to have these conversations with everybody. Our book is a tool, especially this, and we want equality. So get them and then take them with you and say, look at this, because they're all cited. And we want equality real quickly. I don't know, you have there, I think it's 211 citations. Only one is from a conservative source. One. And that's because I wanted to tell that story and nobody else did. I think it was Tucker Carlson. Other than that, Washington Post, CNN, NBC, Think Progress is all liberal stuff, intentional. So when you say, when I say something and you say, I don't agree, and then say, but he cited it, prove it, you say, yeah, but that's Breitbart. Nope, no Breitbart, no Fox News. Nope. You have to do it, because my target audience was really people on the liberals, I mean, not the left.
No.
They're race crazy. I'm sorry.
They are.
That is my closing statement.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and agreeing to do this. Buy his book. Buy all of them. Read them all, but especially the second one and his new one.
I'll give you a 3-pack. I'll give you a 3-pack deal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And you can find him on Twitter. I will have all of your links. I will have all of his links posted in the information in the description. But thank you so much again for agreeing to be here. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, good talking to you too. Thanks.